everyone, Mike Vogel here. Welcome to another edition of Break the Ice, joined as always by our crack producer, Zach Garrett, and by former Caps defenseman Mark Tinordi, as tonight we celebrate the third of the 5 Caps eras as part of the 50th anniversary celebration. That would be the .com Caps from 1997 to 2005. And Mark, thanks for spending some time with us today. We'll take a little tour through your career before and since playing with the Capitals here. I thought it was interesting to note that you played junior hockey in the Western League as a 16-year-old, which I'd love to know what that was like in those days, a little over 40 years ago, or with Lethbridge, which in those days was pretty much of a defense factory. And you were a guy who was famous for making the NHL while going undrafted, and yet you played on that Lethbridge team. First year there as a 16-year-old, that team wins the WHL championship. You play in the Memorial Cup. Seemed like every other defenseman who was there during your time did get drafted. Yeah, there was Gerald Diddick, Bob Rouse. There was a lot of Ken Riggett was a goalie, the Sutters. I guess at the time I got lucky that I had a good camp and I made that team and I actually got to play a lot. So that was even as a 16-year-old. Yeah, and we actually had a 15-year-old forward on that team. Wow. But, we had so many veteran guys on that team that they just led the way. And you spent 4 years there, and then the fifth season at Calgary. What was that experience like going from Lethbridge, which is a few hours south of Calgary, and not a tiny town, but Calgary's a big league city, and you spend your last year of junior there, and I don't know, man, the stats kind of exploded. Were you playing forward or something there then? Because your numbers just went up. I guess I was a little older, and I thought that was going to be my last year, and I was going to go get a job or go to work somewhere, and just the goals went in. I mean, we didn't have that great a team, but it was just. Things just worked out right, and I was actually hurt. I had a hand infection, and I was walking around the rink, and this guy just came up to me, Jack Ferrara. He was a director of player personnel for the Rangers. He said, "Are you Mark Tinordi?" And I said, "Yep." He says, "We'd like to sign you." And I said, "Whoa." And he says, "You have an agent?" I said, "No, nobody wants me." And he gave me his phone number. I called him a couple days later, and a month later, I was in New York and went to New Haven, and the rest started from there. Yeah, you got a couple of games with New Haven at the end of that last junior year, and then your first year pro, you're playing in the NHL. I think at some point in the middle of that season. I mean, what was that experience like too? Going from Alberta to New York City and being there as a 21-year-old kid. Where did you live, and what was that experience like? Yeah, well, the first time I got to New York, I went right to the rink and they had a game. And I sat right down by the bench, and it was just, I couldn't believe it. It was so loud and so many people in the city. I'd never been to New York before. Yeah. And, my hometown was 20,000 people, so this was a shock. After the game, they had somebody drive me out to Rybrook, and they had a little Holiday Inn out there, and I lived there for about a month after that. Wow. So did you ever have like an apartment, or because I know you weren't there for just just that chunk of that? No, they didn't tell me to get a house or anything. I stayed in that hotel for a long time. Wow, that's wild. And then at the beginning, real early in your second pro season, you're part of a big trade, multiplayer trade, where they move you to Minnesota. What was that like when you learn of that trade, that first trade of your career? But you're going closer back to home too. Yeah, I was actually thrilled because most of the time with the Rangers, I'd go from forward to defense. I was playing forward. I'd have to play with Kelly Kissio and Thomas Sandstrom. And then, you got to watch those guys, so I had to fight a lot. And then actually the director of personnel from the Rangers, he got that GM job in Minnesota. So he traded for me. He actually traded for me, so I was really happy because I knew I was going to play defense. Yeah, that's great, too, when you got a guy who's in your corner. Just takes one guy. Can change your whole career. Yeah. And then, in Minnesota, kind of a strange situation at the time because they only had a couple of years left there, which I'm sure nobody knew at the time. But you guys had an incredible run to the Stanley Cup final there in 1991. I think it went through Chicago, St. Louis, and Edmonton. Is that right?
Yep.
And you go up against the Penguins in the Stanley Cup final. You led, if I remember right, led that team in scoring among defensemen in the regular season and in the playoffs. What was that whole experience like, running up to coming within 2 wins, I guess?
It was unbelievable. It was Bob Gainey's first year as a coach, I think. And he didn't say 2 words all year. I mean, he just the pregame meal, and he was so quiet. And we had a whole bunch of young guys, and we just gelled and we played. And we got better and better and winning games. And then, we beat at that time. It was the worst in the first. So we played the top team in the league, which was Chicago. 1-16, and then we played the second best, which was St. Louis, and then we played Edmonton, the defending Stanley Cup champions, and beat them. And then we had a good chance of beating Pittsburgh. We're up 2-1, and I think we were out shooting them like 38-14 at home. And they ended up winning that game, and then that was probably the end of it. Yeah,
they were pretty stacked in those days, obviously, and then you come here later, and there's that rivalry with them. But what do you remember about the period of time where the North Stars were considering leaving Minnesota, and obviously they eventually did. You wind up going down to Dallas. I think you were named captain that year too. But what was that whole process like for you guys as players? The uncertainty of where you were going to be continuing your NHL careers.
That was real weird. I mean, we knew where we were going to practice. It was right beside the Cowboys thing, but it was so weird. Nobody knew anything about hockey when we went down there. We'd go practice at malls with ice, and they'd show the fans what offside was. We'd be in our equipment and demonstrating what offside was, what an icing is, what the penalties are. They had no idea. We did that like dozens of times. But, I mean, they showed up. I mean, they came to the games. Yeah. But they did not know anything about hockey.
Yeah, they seem to have picked it up.
Yeah, they're good
30
now.
Years down the road. And they won a cup, I guess, less than 10 years after.
A couple years after I left, yeah.
Yeah, so give them credit, I guess. Yeah. And then the lockout year of 94, 95, about a week or so, I guess, before that season starts, you're traded here to Washington for Kevin Hatcher, if I remember right. And what was that experience like? You're kind of waiting to find out when the lockout's going to end, and then boom, when it does, you got to pack up and pick up.
That was kind of unexpected because the year before I broke my femur in L.A., so I wasn't ready to play anyhow. So it was like, I don't know, he didn't really say why he traded me, but I wasn't thinking, I was injured. I didn't think I'd get traded, but then when it happened, I was like, all right, I mean, just go to D.C.
And then you get here, and it's Jim Schoenfeld, it's David Poyle, and you hopped onto a team that was pretty loaded, I thought, on the back line. I think this year's Caps defense is one of the best I've seen in all my time here, but the one that you were part of there with Calle Johansson, Sylvain Cote, Joe Ricci, Brennan Witt. I know I'm forgetting somebody, and it was so deep that you even Sergei Gonchar, and you even had like Kenny Klee and Jim Johnson playing forward at times.
Yeah, well, we had such a good combination of defensive defensemen, tough defensemen, offensive defensemen. Whatever six they put out there, we could play. So with Calle and Sylvain and those guys playing offense, and Gonch and the rest of us, killing penalties and playing defense, we had a good combination back there.
And I feel like you had most of your coaches before that were former forwards. You mentioned Bob Gainey, but what was it like? I mean, Jim Schoenfeld was, to me, his playing career was a little bit similar to yours as far as the type of defenseman, the length of career, all that kind of thing. What was it like to have a guy like that as your coach? Maybe someone who would appreciate what you brought to the table.
Yeah, he was good for me because he liked hard-nosed players. That was his style. That was his personality too. He was like let's go. We're tough. And that was, so I fit right into that. Maybe some other guys not so much, but that was his style, and I fit in that style. So I got, in that situation, I got lucky again, having a guy that liked the way I played as a coach.
And we talk about the way you played, and it was, I feel like that it ultimately led to the shortening of your career because you were fearless as far as your body, blocking shots, going into corners, fighting. When you look back on it now, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, they're mixed because, never being drafted, I didn't think I was going to play hockey. And then the way I played, I had one all-star team. I played for Team Canada. I got to be a captain. So things went really good. And at the end of the year, at the end of my career, you start breaking down because of the way you played. So I couldn't really cry too much about getting hurt and breaking down when the way I played got me a lot of stuff, like a lot of playing time and stuff. So it was kind of, 50-50. I mean, you got to take the good with the bad, Yeah. If I was a little smarter, maybe I would have changed my ways when I was 34 or 33,
Yeah, but then maybe you don't last as long as you did.
That's a possibility,
right?
Yeah. Start getting soft.
And then you were here for that bridge where David Poyle and Jim Schoenfeld left and were replaced by George McPhee and Ron Wilson, and you guys go right to the Stanley Cup final that first year there. What did it mean to you to be a part of that first Caps team to get to the Cup final?
That was really pretty awesome because I don't know if we were expected to do too much.
Yeah.
But Wilson, he was a great coach, motivating us. And once we got on a run, I think his greatest ability is once we started to play well, he could keep it going. We never did it well for like 7 games and then dropped off. He kept us going a long time. And it's like that. We had good defense back then. We had a lot of scoring. And the guys, it's hard to say how you gel like that, but something comes together and you get a lot of confidence. And someone does something every game to help you out, and that's the key.
It was wild, too, the goaltending that you guys had during your time here because Jim Carey won the Vezina, and I thought I think there was one year where he had 8-9 shutouts.
Yeah.
I feel like most of them were 16-20 shots because you guys were laying out. You and Joe Ricci blocked a ton of shots in front of him. And then he goes to Boston in the trade. You guys start that 97-98 season like 7-1, but Billy Ranford gets dinged opening night. Ole Kolzig all of a sudden just takes the ball and runs with it.
Yeah.
Here's a guy who's like 27 years old and has 14 career wins and winds up with 300 of them. But he benefited from you guys as well. Although I would argue that during that Cup run, he was the main reason why you
definitely
guys.
Yeah. I mean, you can't do anything without a goalie, and he was fantastic.
Yeah, the Ottawa series, the Buffalo series. What was it like? What do you remember about coming home from after Joey Juneau scores that goal in overtime in Buffalo, and you guys coming back to Piney Orchard that night? Yeah,
I think we were just like happy. I thought we knew we could do it, and we really believed we could win that series for sure. And it was just a belief that okay, this is real now. Like we're going to be good and we're going to challenge. And we just had a lot of confidence when we got home.
And there was a ton of people waiting there in the
airport
parking lot, which had to be pretty heartening.
Yeah,
for
you don't
guys.
get that too often in a career,
especially in those days.
Yeah.
And then I think it was a year after that things kind of just blew up really for the whole team. Just tons of man games lost, and I think that was the year that if I remember right, it was an icing call or did you?
We were chasing. We were killing a penalty, and we were like all going towards the net, and there's a big pile up, and I knew I broke my ankle real bad. I mean, I knew I broke something, and I got up, went off the ice, and I said something's broke, and it turned out it was a talus bone inside my ankle. And that was the end of my career. Yeah,
that was the last game you played, and I know the Atlanta Thrashers took you in the expansion.
Yeah, that must
draft.
have been for a draft pick or something. No one called me, no one did nothing.
So you were never got to pull on the sweater or anything like that.
No, because I mean, the doctor said you're probably going to have to retire because he said that bone doesn't get very much blood, and it's really hard to heal.
And that was like a year or two after Pat Peake had the shattered heel in the playoff game against Pittsburgh too. Similar, kind of a similar situation. I think he was going back on an icing touch up. What did you do like right after playing? What was the transition like for you because your career did end pretty abruptly.
Yeah.
You were still at the peak of your powers, and it was just an injury that cut it short.
Well, I had 2 kids that played hockey. Yeah. They played for the Little Caps. I can't remember what age they were, probably 12 and 14. So I ended up coaching both of those ones for a little bit, and I coached Jared most of the time. So I ended up coaching with the Little Caps for like 11 years until they both left. So I spent, 11 years coaching my kids after that.
Yeah, and then Jared's first-round draft pick goes into the NHL, plays a couple hundred games. What was that experience like, being a hockey dad and seeing your son make it to the NHL and get drafted too?
Yeah. I mean, first-rounder, he beat me by a lot, but, he works hard at it, so, I got to give him all the credit. He grinds away and works hard at it, and, my other son played Division I for RPI. So that was great. So they got a lot out of hockey. So coming from Washington, that was I think a real big success.
Yeah, and RPI is not an easy school to get into.
No.
Joey Juneau and Adam Oates.
Well, he's not an engineer. He was in business school, but yeah.
But still.
Yeah.
Did you get to go on any of those dad's trips with Jared?
Yeah, we went a couple of years ago when he played for Chicago. We went to L.A. and Anaheim, and that was a lot of fun.
How cool was that, just to be able to share that experience and to be reminded of what the day in, day out life was like, and how much did you sense that changing 20 years down the road from when you were living?
Yeah, well, I know when I first got to Chicago, they had a practice. Their life was a lot easier than our life was when we played. Went in there, their practice rink is unbelievable. They have a kitchen in there. Yeah. It's huge. It's beautiful. They get in a plane. We got food. I mean, their pregame meals and postgame meals, it's like unbelievable. So I was like, whoa, you guys have really stepped it up since we played.
Yeah, definitely a little different from the late 80s and the 1990s in that regard. When you look back on your career and what you were able to achieve, you got to be pretty proud of it. You wore a letter. You played in a couple of cup finals. I think you could have played a lot, a lot more games if not for the injury. But given where you started and like you say, I mean, it all just kind of starts because some guy sees you play and he's the right guy to see you play.
Realistically, I was like 3 weeks away from being it. So. 3 weeks, you think about it, 3 weeks, that's not a lot of time to make the NHL. So, and I never asked him why he liked me. He just said, give me a call. I called him, and one guy liked me, and that's it's a pretty lucky thing.
What's it like for you to come back to these air nights or little reunions or alumni gatherings where you get to see old teammates or even guys who played before you or after you, but wore the same sweaters?
It's pretty cool because I haven't seen, Ole and Callie and Joe. I haven't seen them in probably 15 years since I retired. I mean, I don't know if Callie stayed here or not, but they, people don't stay here. So, and I did. So I seen Sylvain a little bit. He comes around because he fishes, but I see Peter Bondra, a couple times a year. But I haven't seen any of them in like 15 years. What
was it about the area? Because you grew up, I guess, in Red Deer, or were born in Red Deer. What was it about the area that made you want to stick around?
Well, I had 4 young kids, and I was just like, where am I going to move them to? I don't want to really go back to Canada in a small town. So Minnesota I liked, but I said, why move just for the sake of moving? They got a lot of friends here. They enjoy the area, and I was just like, might just stay here.
Well, it's been great catching up with you. Good to have you back, and I hope you enjoy your time here tonight.
Thank you.
We definitely enjoyed watching you patrolling the blue line here for all those years back in the 90s.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks to Mark Tinordi for spending some time with us on this episode of Break the Ice.